Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm placing new order for euro. I want to buy at 116.66. Okay, 116.66, order placed. Position opened long for euro against United States dollar at 116.66.
We come from every walk of life. We're proud of who we are and what we believe. We are among the 200,000 people who work for Bank of America. What would you like the power to do?
2020, a devastating year rocked by the pandemic and protests. More than 26 million people infected with coronavirus. Too many lives lost. Some communities are harder hit. In the United States,
health disparities have always existed for the African American community.
In Europe,
it's impossible to be with distance with each other.
COVID-19, a string of police killings of unarmed Black Americans shocked the world, sparking global protests. The need for inclusion and equality has never been more urgent.
Consumers want to see commitment and to the Black community and support.
We convene leading figures in business, finance, and health for uncomfortable but crucial conversations that cannot wait. It's now or never. This is the Bloomberg Equality.
Okay, as you can see, I am placing a stop on profit for euro, and stop on profit goes, if I bought 1666, it goes to 116.71. Okay, people who follow my trades probably understand how I place on profit, stop on profit, how it works. So basically, I don't have to explain. For other guys who just joined my live trading channel, you can get the strategy on ticker. You can see red color. Strategy is available there. They're full course, and you will find out basically how it works, how to buy, how to hedge, why I hold more short positions, less long positions, why it's more profitable to hold like these positions. By the way, why broker pays me to hold short positions, how much, all of these you can find basically from the strategy. Okay, so I place stop on profit, and as you know, if it will reach the level 116.71, I will get £500 in profit. Okay, speak to you later, guys.
The coronavirus crisis has painfully reminded us of the many institutional barriers that minorities and communities of color face every day. But it has also impacted workers with disabilities, including those with mental health issues. To truly embody our mission for more inclusive workplaces in the future, we must go further to bring more of these incredible individuals into our organizations. I'm confident that if we continue working together, listening to our colleagues at events like this one, and taking action, we will achieve that goal. Again, thank you all for joining us today, and please enjoy the rest of the summit.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shirtia Brantley, Deputy New York Bureau Chief and Senior Editor of Bloomberg Equality. I'm so pleased you could join us for the Bloomberg Equality Summit. Our theme is now or never, inclusion in the age of disruption. 2020 has reminded us of the urgency with which we need to create a more equal society. We simply cannot wait. Our next session focuses on disability and mental health, what it takes to thrive, not just survive, during this pandemic. But first, I'd like to welcome Ann B. Oxrider, Senior Vice President and Benefits Executive at Bank of America, our sponsor for this session.
Hello, my name is Ann Oxrider, and I work for Bank of America as part of our global benefits organization with responsibility for our emotional wellness strategies. We are honored to sponsor the Bloomberg Equality Summit for the third consecutive year. Now more than ever, it is critical that we come together as organizations and leaders around the world to drive equality across all sectors of society. At Bank of America, diversity and inclusion are part of our fiber and core to our focus on being a great place to work for our more than 212,000 teammates around the world. Our commitment to diversity starts at the top with our board of directors and our CEO. It is affirmed in the work that we do both inside and outside of our organization. More than 50% of our workforce are women. More than 45% of our U.S. workforce are people of color. 50% of our management team is diverse. And we are proud to be one of only 4 S&P companies with 6 or more women on the board. Gender, race, and ethnic diversity are cornerstones to ensuring we are creating diverse and inclusive environments. But to be truly inclusive, we must acknowledge that there are also other less visible differences. 2 of these are the focus of the conversations that you are about to hear. The first is mental health and the goal of removing the stigma so often associated with mental illness and removing the barriers that prevent someone from seeking the support that they need. And the support of individuals with both seen and unseen physical or developmental disabilities. This happens to be the 30th anniversary of the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act in the United States. And it's also the 30th anniversary of a unit within Bank of America's Support Services, Fulfillment, and Marketing Group, which today employs over 300 teammates with developmental disabilities. These teammates play an integral role in the delivery of information to our employees and clients worldwide. At Bank of America, supporting the well-being of all of our teammates and their family members is our #1 priority. We recognize the additional strains that individuals are feeling this year due to the impacts of the coronavirus and the heightened racial tensions. As a company, we have come together. Across Bank of America, we are committed to our fellow teammates, to helping one another, and to living our values. As part of that, we provide a wide variety of emotional wellness support to target the unique needs of teammates, from supporting the trauma of racial injustice to easing the burdens of child and elder care, helping build resiliency and skills related to mindfulness, and providing access at no cost to experts in the behavioral health field. On behalf of Bank of America, thank you for your commitment to creating diverse, inclusive, and equitable workplaces and communities.
Thanks, Ann. Before we get started, we have a few housekeeping announcements to ensure you can all enjoy the program. For today's event, we have partnered with Thyssen, an audio-to-text platform that is transcribing today's discussions in real time, making the event more accessible. You can access Thyssen for the real-time transcription via the link in the session description. If you experience any issues with audio or video quality while viewing, try to refresh your browser or use the chat box in the bottom right corner of your screen for support. You'll be able to submit questions during the interviews, and we really hope you do, so please engage with us. While we're probably not going to get to all of you, we'll certainly try our best. To submit a question, please click open the white tab on the right-hand side of the video window and submit your question. If you note your name and geographical location, we'll give you a shout out. Please engage with us on social media using hashtag #BloombergEquality. With that, I hand it over to my colleague, Carol Masser, co-anchor of Bloomberg Business Week Television and Radio, who is joined by Alyssa Milano, actress and activist.
Welcome, everyone. Well, our next guest is someone that you know of, and she has pretty much lived most of her life in the public eye. She's also someone who has allowed us into her personal life before, and she's letting us do so again today. Alyssa Milano, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, and I want to kick off with, because one of the things that we've talked about a lot here during the pandemic is not only our physical well-being, but our mental well-being and mental health. And what's interesting is, and we're going to get into anxiety and mental illness overall, but you had COVID-19 months ago, and you're still feeling the impact of that. How are you doing? Tell me kind of where you are in this.
It's interesting. It vacillates. Some days I feel back to normal, and other days it's like I have a recurrence of the acute symptoms. I was sick with the acute illness for 5 weeks in March and April, and I have not felt back to normal since then. Some days I feel okay, but really it's just this like this incredible exhaustion. It feels like I have no motivation to physically move my body, and I don't know if that is some sort of mental protection or if it's my body trying to regenerate or what is happening. But I have shortness of breath, heart palpitations, my hair is still falling out, and I have the worst part, I have this ringing in my ears that is driving me bonkers. So yeah,
not great.
It has not been great, and it's interesting because of all my friends. I have quite a few friends that were sick. There's maybe 1 out of 12 that feels completely back to normal. The rest are just having these long hauler symptoms. And so, we find great comfort in each other, knowing that there are other people out there going through the same thing. And that makes a really big difference. And I think that makes a big difference in our mental health in general, just to know that there are other people, that go through similar things that we do.
Well, this is why we're so grateful that you're talking with us and talking about your own mental illness and talking about anxiety. And I want to take a few steps back, because from what I understand, just doing a little bit of research and watching some different things and some interviews you've done, you've dealt with anxiety for a long time. Is that fair?
Oh, yes. Yes, but I don't know that I had labeled it as anxiety, but my earliest recollection, and everybody experiences anxiety differently. For me, I get I get in a crisis mode that is very hard for me to break the pattern. And basically it gets to the point that my brain just thinks that's the way it's supposed to be functioning in fight, flight, or freeze. And I should also say is when we're talking about issues that affect the brain, we really prefer to talk about mental health, not mental illness. I think once we start calling it mental illness, that's when the stigma comes with that. And also to try to sort of be conscious of the phrases that we use, as far as like, I actually just did it and I caught myself, that the ringing in my ears was driving me bonkers. Like all of those things, all of those natural ways of describing things of the past, we sort of have to break out of, I think, in order to break the stigma. But my earliest recollection of being in crisis mode was I lived in South Africa for 3 months in 2000. And it was, only 9 years after apartheid was abolished. And I volunteered in a township in a children's hospital. And I was very strong while I was there. When I came home and had to assimilate like that part of me that volunteered and dedicated my time to helping other people and trying to assimilate that with the person that lived in Beverly Hills and drove a BMW, I had a very hard time getting back and getting acclimated. And I went through about, and at this time I didn't know, but I would say 4 or 5 months of complete and total panic. anxiety. And for me, I have generalized anxiety disorder and I also get panic attacks. So what that basically means is my base level of anxiety is almost in a panic attack mode. And then my panic attacks are sort of on top of that. So I remember like I went to my general practitioner and I wasn't even in therapy, which by the way, if there was anyone that needed to be in therapy, it was a child actor that survived, right?
But was there anybody around you? Was there anybody around you saying, wait a minute, Alyssa, this isn't right. You shouldn't feel this way chronically, and that would step in?
I mean, my mom I have a lot of the same characteristics as my mother. She suffers from anxiety. She also has dyslexia. I have dyslexia as well. So she was encouraging me to go, but I went to my general practitioner and they put me on a very generic antidepressant, which made me, gain 15 pounds. And that was like a whole other issue. And plus I was working 80 hours a week. I was working on charm. And so it was very hard to take that sort of break and self-care.
I want to bring you forward a little bit, because from what I understand, it really became, I guess, very debilitating after the birth of your son, Milo. Tell us a little bit about what happened, right? You came home, and I know there were some complications or some stress just before he was delivered. Tell us what happened.
So I was in labor for 18 hours. I pushed for 3.5 hours, and he came to us via C-section. The birth itself and the labor itself was very traumatic. Not to get too graphic, but when a woman says she pushes for 3 hours, it is with the help of nurses who are basically trying to manipulate the baby while it's still inside of your body to get the baby out. So for me, it felt incredibly invasive and traumatic. And I think that it triggered my sexual assault trauma.
Right.
Because I was sitting there and I was thinking, why does this feel like such a violation? Why is this does not feel, and I don't think women talk about this at all.
And you're not in control, and it's right. You're not in control. It's a very tough situation, very heated.
And there's lots of people coming in the room and plugging things in, and like, my mom used to joke, like, if they had a car in there, they'd be backing that in just to like, so that I think is what triggered my postpartum anxiety. And then I had, I felt better. My milk came in, I felt better. I had this beautiful little delicious baby. And it was when he weaned himself very suddenly without any like going down. My hormones were out of control. And that's when my anxiety started to come back again, was when my hormone level dipped after he weaned, which was at 10 months. So then I had this experience where go ahead.
No. I was going to say, you eventually found yourself in the ER room, right? In the wee hours of the morning.
Yes. But before that, the part of this story that I think is almost the most important is I went into my OBGYN when this first started happening. And she looked at me, and with a straight face, she said to me, well, it's a big life change. Go for a hike. Try to find some self-care time. And by the way, she said to me, you're 38 years old, so if you want to have another baby, we should probably start thinking about that. And I remember so clearly just being in tears, and I looked at her and I said, I'm not sure I want the baby that I have right now. And you're talking to me about another baby? So I felt completely like the health care that I was getting was totally not where it should have been. So I would just go to the emergency room. I would go to the emergency room every time I felt like I couldn't deal.
Well, and one of the times that you went, you actually had yourself committed, right? For 3 days.
I did.
Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Why did you know you needed to do that?
So at the time I was working on Mistresses, which was a show on ABC, and I was still functional and I was still able to learn my lines and show up for work. And the thing about mental health, and when you're struggling with mental health issues, is you can't see it. Right? Someone looks completely together and healthy. And so I knew that the only way that I was going to get adequate care, that the production would understand that I needed to take time off, only if, and I think women feel this in every industry, if they could see the severity. And I didn't think that there was a way for them to see the severity without going into a facility for 3 days. And I have to tell you that experience really saved my life. And I had very little support, like my parents, you know, they're very supportive now, but at the time, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, because my mother had her own mental health issues, they were very much of the school of buck up, get over it. Well, you're gonna be okay.
I was going to say to you that I think so many of us think, well, I'm just stressed out right now. I'm overworked. I'm just worried. There's just too much going on in my life. And we tend to shrug these things off. And it's something that you actually said that you didn't anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure the severity of what I was feeling. Excuse me, it's the truth.
Bless you.
Thank you. I'm not sure that anyone could shrug off what I was feeling and how severe it was. Otherwise, I would have been the first one to shrug it off. So, so very, very, very difficult time. But what happened was I went in and I started mapping out when I was in the facility, I started mapping out when my anxiety came. And sure enough, it always had to do with my cycle and always had to do with my hormone levels. So what this doctor that I saw there told me was, this happens to women. Nobody had ever said this before to me. And he suggested that I go see this doctor that specializes in women's mental health and hormonal imbalances. And that is still the team that I have to this day.
What do you think was the toughest part of this? Facing the illness, asking for help, working on a recovery, or was it all hard?
It was the feeling. The rest of it, look, I've lived my entire life in the public eye. There was no way that I wasn't going to share this part of who I am. But the physical sensation of being in your body with when you're struggling with mental health issues. And here's the thing. I had resources at my disposal. I could go to the emergency room. I had health insurance. I had people in my life. I had a job that I could take off from. The thing that terrifies me and the thing that I understand is when people are going through this alone, when single mothers are going through any mental health issue, or someone that doesn't have a supportive family or doesn't have the resources to get help, that's when people self-medicate. That's when people turn to drugs and alcohol.
Or give up.
Or give up. And so,
well,
I think
this is something I wanted to ask you because it's the Equality Summit. And what we do is we look at equality from so many different ways. The virus has reminded us, right, that people don't have equal access to health care. What do you think, and forgive me for doing this, but I'm just curious because you're educated about this, you've learned about it, you do understand that you were privileged in having great health care and access and support. But what would have happened? I mean, do you think if you didn't have all of that?
I don't think there was a choice. I had to have that. I had to figure out a way out. And for most people, the only way out is in. right, is really taking a deep dive. And I also want to say that there have been flare-ups since then, but I haven't been sick, the last 9 years there totally. There were flare-ups, like when I sent out the Me Too tweet, and I started getting responses from women about their own sexual trauma that triggered my sexual trauma, and how I had to sort of fess up to the fact that I'd never really dealt with it, that I kept pushing it, and you cannot do that, because your brain will misfire, and I'm really, I think the message of equality and the message of women's health in this conversation, independent of anything else, when you think about, certain cancers like ovarian cancer, and how there is no test for it, and it seems like there's no rush to find a test. These are the issues, the inequality that we face as women in healthcare that goes beyond, sadly, mental health.
Well, it's interesting that we're having this conversation. Here we are in a week where, the passing of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and there are concerns about what that means for Obama's healthcare plans and what that means for women's rights. So, what you talk about is so relevant. I do want to ask you, and I have to say, anxiety and mental health issues are near and dear to me, and I have family and extended family members who struggle with that. Why is this so important that you use your platform to get this out to people, to talk about it, to share another very personal thing of your life? Yeah.
We have to get away from the fact that this is bad or that there's stigma attached to it. I believe that seeing a mental health professional should be as common as going to the dentist twice a year for a health checkup, for a tooth health checkup. And by the way, that is how I'm raising my children. We call it, with my kids, we call it a feelings doctor. And they both have, a feelings doctor where, you're going to go in to get your teeth cleaned. You're going to go in to get your vaccinations and your shot. And you're going to check in with someone who specializes in feelings to know that what you're feeling in your heart is okay and is normal. And I think if we can erase that stigma and make healthcare more accessible to people who struggle with mental health issues, then I think we're going to be better for it as a society, and certainly a happier society.
I agree. And I don't want to, I'm all Bloomberg, and I don't want to go all economic and productivity, but all of this, your physical health, your mental health, they all have an impact on your ability to live a really full life, and whether it's on your personal life or also in your workplace. I mean, these are costs if we want to go there, but there are costs to society by not doing this. I do wonder.
Absolutely.
I do wonder,
Absolutely,
is there
especially
anything,
when you think about like the fact that we don't have paid maternity leave, and how we don't have early free childcare. I mean, women contribute a lot to this economy, and when we take those options away from women, what we're taking also away is for them to help with economic growth within our country.
Alyssa, as we get ready to wrap up this conversation, is there something you'd like to leave our group with that kind of gives you hope? Because as you say, it needs to be like going to the dentist and getting, your annual physical. Your mental health needs to be checked regularly. Is there anything that gives you hope?
Conversations like this give me hope. So thank you so much. My kids give me hope in that we may be able to, in my family, break the cycle of, my grandmother hasn't left the house in 32 years. So my mission is, my mother has struggled. I have struggled. I'm going to give my children everything, all the tools that they possibly need to break this genetic, hereditary, generational trauma, so that I have hope that every family can do that. And I will continue to fight to make sure that people have access to health care so that they can take care of their mind and their brain the same way you take care of your heart and your tummy.
Well, we're going to leave it on that note. I love what you're doing with your kids, and this whole idea of breaking the cycle, I think is so important. Alyssa, thank you so much for sharing this with you, and really wish you well. Stay safe.
I really appreciate the opportunity to share.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Coons, a reporter at Bloomberg News. I cover mental health for Bloomberg. In some of my reporting, I've come to learn how important it is how a CEO's views on mental health in the workplace really inform a company's culture. So I'm joined today by Chuck Robbins, the CEO of Cisco. Chuck, thanks for coming to the Equality Summit and discussing this today. Thanks for having me.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk about mental health as a form of equality in the workplace. And I wanted to start out with how you came to understand that this was a critical issue for your workforce and something that you needed to address head on rather than maybe remain in where it was in the shadows for many years up until probably the last 5 years or so. It's become a more prevalent dialogue.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a really important topic, so I'm glad you're covering it. It is, and it's been obviously highlighted in the last 6 to 9 months for people through this pandemic. But, you know, it all started as what I would characterize as a transactional response to some events that occurred when Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain both committed suicide within like a week's time. And I was sitting in my office and I was just thinking to myself that I'm sure we have employees who are struggling with mental health issues. And wow, what if they watched these two suicides and decided that that's the right outcome for them? And so I walked into my head of HR, walked into her office and said exactly that. You know, I don't want people to feel this way. So we made a decision. We crafted together an email to the company that just said, look, we recognize that people could be struggling. There are always, issues. And we highlighted all the support resources that we have and told them that we're here for you. And it was really just trying to do anything we could to just, if we could insert and influence someone who might be struggling at that moment in time. And the result of that was overwhelming. I didn't understand what we were opening up, to be honest. And the feedback and the email responses that we got to that were just incredible, with all these stories and the gratitude, stories about their children or their friends or themselves. And subsequent to that, we had employees who were willing and wanted to stand up in front of the entire company and tell their story so they could help someone else not go through whatever it was that they had gone through. And so it just magnified for me that this is a serious issue that is quite prevalent. And then from that point forward, we've built a much more, I'd say, regular communication plan. We have more updates on it. Then as we got into the pandemic, we realized that even more people are suffering. And so we implemented more things as we've gotten into that. But it was that initial situation that actually brought this to the forefront for us.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? So you mentioned the pandemic, and that created, with the physical distancing, a lot of isolation for people. And you've also had the compounded effect of the wildfires, adding another layer of quarantining to people who've already been isolated for some time. How have you responded to that? What are examples of maybe benefits and ways that you've reached out to your employee base and tried to keep this conversation going at a time when so many people are stuck at home?
Yeah, it is it's been interesting. And what we did when the pandemic first hit is we started a weekly video meeting with all of our employees. So we invited all 77,000 people to join us every week for an hour and 15 minutes. And early on, the topics were very related to the actual, COVID situation, the virus itself, and how to understand what was going on. So we had lots of medical personnel that were joining these calls, and we were talking a lot about that particular situation at the time. And we talked about everything from testing to, we've given updates on what we think is happening with vaccines and therapeutics all along the way. But early on, it became very clear that people who were now at home, in many cases, they were people who lived by themselves. And, the first few months, people really stayed in. And in some cities, they still are. Some people have gotten a little more flexible where you're doing a little more, but you're being cautious. But early on, people really stayed in. And so you had employees who lived by themselves and felt very isolated. You had employees who all of a sudden found themselves in very small homes without a home office, trying to work from home with 2, 3, 4 very young children at home. You have employees who had elderly parents living with them, and then the fear of somehow COVID getting to your elderly parents who are much more at risk created stress. And then just the lack of knowledge about how this thing is going to end. And when you have all those pressures and you don't know when it's going to end, it creates more mental stress, anxiety, and depression. And so we then brought mental health experts onto these calls that we were having every week. And we've gone to every 2 weeks now, but the same experts are still there for any questions that arise. And then we've subsequently hosted a number of mental health sessions for our employees. We've doubled and tripled the number of sessions that we're making available. We've put benefits in place to help our employees with childcare, with make sure they understand everything we can do for those who are treating elderly parents or dealing with that. So we've just really doubled down on everything that we were doing to try to make sure that we're taking care of our employees right now. And it's a very complicated time. So,
do you have any sense out of all of these benefits that you've rolled out, what's the most utilized at this stage? What people are really gravitating towards?
Well, I think the sessions that we've
Position closed on euro at 116.71. We have £500 in profit. Okay.
For people to engage with experts who can just make them feel better about the situation or give them some coping mechanisms for what they're dealing with. And you don't necessarily make it go away, but if you can help people, figure out how they can deal with it more effectively. And I've told even my direct team, I said, right now, during this time, you need to find your own therapy. What is your therapy right now? Because I need it. My wife needs it. Everyone needs to, what is it that gives you that mental break? We've told our employees, if you need to block an hour in the middle of the day to go for a walk because that's what recharges you and gives you the break you need, then do that. Block it. Take control of your time. And we really had to explain to our leadership teams that very issue is that you have employees that have small children at home, and that 3-year-old doesn't really care that you scheduled a meeting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon if they need their parent at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so you're going to have to be very empathetic, and you're going to have to be very flexible, and you're going to have to be willing to say, hey, let's reschedule. You take care of your child. And those kinds of things just help take the pressure off of the folks that are trying to deal with this. So there's a whole lot of those things that we've tried to do as well. And look, we're learning all along. We didn't open up the how to deal with a pandemic handbook when we started this. We've just been learning and trying to do the best we can. So.
Yeah, I can relate to that myself. I have small children at home, and they've definitely, like you said, not necessarily respected the meeting